Okay, we'll go ahead and call to order this regular meeting of the City of Leavenworth Planning Commission. We do have a quorum. Commissioners have received minutes from the meeting of February 6th. Are there any corrections or additions to be made to those minutes? Okay, if not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of February 6th as written.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second that, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. We have no old business. The new business is 2016-23 special use permit, 2622 State Street. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, this is a special use permit request to allow a 170-foot tall monopole type communication tower at 2622 State Street. The development regulations do permit a communication tower of this height with a special use permit, so that's why this is before us. The property is commonly known as the State Street Housing Apartments. It is just north of, I'll zoom this out just a little bit, just north of Leonard Street there on State. The proposed tower is being commissioned by T-Mobile to serve customers in the Leavenworth area, and it will have room for 2 additional carriers to co-locate on the tower. Zoom back in. The ground enclosure is proposed to be 50 feet by 50 feet square, and it will be located sort of in the northwest corner of the property to the northwest of the existing building, tucked back in a little bit of a clearing in the existing tree cover that is there. There is no lighting proposed on the tower aside from anything required by the FAA for safety reasons. The applicant has also provided landscaping around the outside of the enclosure as was requested by staff. The commission can recommend issuance of a special use permit based on 4 findings. I'll just run through those quickly. The first one is that the proposed special use complies with all applicable provisions of the ordinance. Staff believes that that is the case with this request. Number 2 is that the proposed special use of the specified location will contribute to and promote the economic development, welfare, and convenience of the public. Staff recognizes that communication towers they do provide a number of benefits to residents in the area, so we do find that that condition is met. The third is that the special use will not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood in which it's located. Staff does not believe that that would be the case. The property or the location is screened to the north and the west by some existing dense tree cover along the creek bed. As I said, it is tucked back in behind that existing multifamily building where it is proposed to be located. And number 4 is that the location and size of the special use, the nature and intensity of the operation involved in or conducted in connection with it, and the location of the site with respect to streets giving access to it are such that the special use will not dominate the immediate neighborhood, so as to prevent development and use of the neighboring property in accordance with the applicable zoning district regulations. Again, as I mentioned before, staff does find that this is a good location for the cell tower, being located behind the multifamily building and tucked into the existing tree cover. The request does meet all setback requirements that are laid out in the development regulations. The regulations stipulate that a 1.05 height setback be provided, and that has been provided in all directions here. If you have any questions for me, I can answer those, and the applicant is here as well.
I do have a question.
Sure.
I'm wondering, does the city mandate at all a time period for completion for any of these communication towers?
We
Or
do
not?
not.
Okay.
Once a building permit is issued, there are time restraints connected with that. I believe a 6-month time period once a building permit is issued. The work has to keep progressing,
Okay.
but in conjunction with the special use permit, no.
Okay, thank you.
Jeremy, is there a requirement to notify the neighborhood?
There is. We provided the required 200-foot notification, and we didn't receive any complaints or feedback. We had a few questions from neighbors, but no written comments or anything like that.
Is the proposed location, is it 170 feet from the apartment building?
Not from the apartment building, the applicant could probably, well, actually, it might be. You guys might, your drawings are a little bit
Sorry.
bigger.
Julie just, we're 109 feet.
Oh, yep, there it is, 109 feet from the existing building.
That just seems to be kind of a strange requirement that we have, that it have setback from other properties, but there's no setback required from a building.
Yeah, I think the thought behind that is that the actual property owner is making the application here, and so that they would be taking their own structures on their property into account. And that setback requirement is really to protect surrounding property owners who maybe don't have a stake or interest in it.
The question I had was, on our October 3rd meeting, we approved that Echo site for that special use permit for the 100-foot tower on Olive Street north of Spruce. I was under the impression that was T-Mobile. Is that correct? Was that T-Mobile
I believe
then?
so.
So that this is another site being put up for T-Mobile to increase their coverage in addition to, they need this in addition to the one that was put up in October. Is that correct? For better coverage? Is that the issue? I'm seeing some guys shaking their head.
I believe so. I did forward you all some information
Right.
related to what the state has passed
Right.
and the need for a particular location. The state has determined is not something that the cities can really take into consideration, and that's not something that the cities can request information on, but it would be our assumption that that's, it's needed for their coverage.
So that radius of the one we put on, that we had approved, has that radius to it for efficiency, and this is outside that zone to increase the efficiency where this one is at. Can I say that correct, the way I worded that?
We'll have,
Okay.
after the staff report, we'll go
Okay.
ahead and we'll get. the
Okay, thank you.
applicant.
Yeah, he can
Okay.
probably comment on
Got it.
on their coverage
Okay.
areas a little bit.
Could you, just for the record, Julie, could you go over some of the new restrictions now that are in
Sure,
effect?
some of that. We are still working on the actual rewrite to the regulations. It involves, as you're aware, you get into it, it involves a few more sections than you originally thought. So we're still working on that, but basically, I'll just go over what we presented to the city commission last month. The state, as of October 30 or October 1st of last year, put in some new regulations regarding how cities can regulate these communication towers, and included in that is 18 restrictions placed on the cities. So I'll just go through those real quick. So number one is that the city cannot require an applicant to submit information about or evaluate an applicant's business decisions with respect to the applicant's design service, customer demand for service, or quality of the applicant's service to or from a particular site. So Claude, that goes a little bit to what we were asking about. Number two is that the city cannot require information that concerns the specific need for the wireless support structure, again tied to that question. Number three is that the city can't evaluate an application based on the availability of other potential locations for the placement of the wireless structure. The fourth is that the city can't dictate the type of equipment or technology to be used by the applicant. The fifth is that the city can't require the removal of existing wireless structures as a condition for approval. We can still regulate the removal of abandoned structures. Number six is that the city cannot impose any restrictions at or near civilian airports. 7 is that the city cannot establish or enforce regulations for radio frequency signal strength. Number 8 is that the city cannot impose any surety requirements, including bonds, escrow deposits, letters of credit, or other type of financial surety. Number 9 is that the city cannot discriminate or create a preference on the basis of the ownership of any property or structure. And 10 is that the city can't impose any unreasonable requirements or obligations regarding the presentation, appearance, or function of the facility. 11 is that the city cannot impose any requirements that an applicant purchase, subscribe to, or use any facilities or services owned, provided, or operated by an entity in which the city has a competitive, economic, financial, or other interest. 12 is that the city cannot impose environmental testing, sampling, or monitoring requirements that exceed federal law. 13 is that the city cannot impose any compliance measurements for radio frequency emissions or exposure from wireless facilities that exceed the requirements of the FCC. 14 is that the city cannot reject an application based on perceived or alleged environmental effects of radio frequency emissions or exposure. 15 is that the city cannot prohibit the use of emergency power systems that comply with federal and state environmental requirements and do not violate local health and safety requirements and noise control ordinances. But in no case may we prevent the provision of emergency power during an actual emergency. 16 is that the city cannot condition or require the approval of an application based on the applicant's agreement to permit wireless facilities provided or operated by any authority to be placed at or co-located with the applicant's support structure. 17 is that the city cannot impose a greater setback or fall zone requirement for a wireless support structure than for other types of commercial structures of a similar size. And the final is that the city cannot limit the duration of an approval for less than 10 years.
So really, it seems that, based on this state law now, our findings are based pretty much on the generic special use four findings that you went over earlier in the staff report.
Right. So it's our understanding that, we can still have some, regulation in terms of zoning and that type of thing. But yeah, the specifics, we can't really get too far into.
Any questions regarding the staff report? Okay, thank you. This will be a public hearing. Is there anybody who'd like to speak for or against the proposed special use permit? Sir, please come up to the podium and give us your name and where you live.
Good evening. Thanks for your time. My name is Justin Anderson. I'm with SSC here on behalf of Skyway Towers, who's the developer, and their anchor tenant is T-Mobile. My address is 9900 West 109th Street, Overland Park, Kansas, 66210. Sorry, I speak fast, it's kind of memorized. So everything that staff has said is correct. We agree with all of the staff comments in the staff report. This is a site being proposed to bolster T-Mobile's coverage and capacity. So not just to provide new coverage, but also to help communicate with other sites and offload data as they become busier or this site becomes busier, it communicates with those. It is co-locatable, as Julie mentioned. There were some other properties that were looked at, and I know that the KCPL West Star site was one of those. They have a small tower that we had proposed to do a drop and swap on, which we take down their tower and put up a larger tower. They weren't interested in that or leasing additional area on their parcel, nor was the parcel just to the north of that interested. So I feel like if you've been to this site, it makes a lot of sense when you're out there. It sits, if I may approach, the site's going to sit right around in here. There's a ton of mature trees in the area. The creek that runs on the west and to the north really separates those parcels in those directions. We've been over there to kind of, give ourselves a view of what those neighbors would see. And it's a really broken up view, if any, that they'll have. And that's in the winter time with no foliage on the trees. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, just general site design or more technical if you prefer.
Any questions?
Justin, will this improve the Sprint coverage in Leavenworth?
This particular site will only improve Sprint's coverage if Sprint decides to co-locate on it.
Okay.
So,
T-Mobile and Sprint, though?
Well, they don't share, so they can use the same types or the same model number of of radios now,
Okay.
but they don't share.
All right.
So the goal for this site, Skyway Towers, is a tower manufacturer, a build-to-suit, if you will. So their goal is to get as many tenants on it as possible. That's really how they make their money. And so it would behoove them to market this site as much as possible. My colleague Kirk and I both have Sprint, and we know that it was a little lacking. So hopefully they do.
Good, thanks.
Yep.
How will you be getting in and out for the actual construction?
So we use the existing access off of State Street, and then we go north off the existing parking lot about 130 feet. And then there's landscaping on the south and east side of the compound.
How long would it take to put the tower up?
Actual construction time is averaging around 3 to 4 weeks. This time of the year, especially with all of the wind, you really can't stack a tower if the wind is over about 19 miles per hour. So we have a site in Topgolf by Overland Park right now that the top section's been lying on the ground for 3 days because it's been too windy to get the crane in the air. You know, as far as when they're going to build the site, they've been pretty active on getting these sites in the air through either EcoSite, Skyway Towers. My colleague and I have worked a bunch of these through the metro area for both, and they've been going up pretty quickly.
A question I had was, since you're aware, the Echo site, the previous tower was a 100-foot tower, and this one's a 170-foot tower. Is there ever a situation that you, like you determined you need a 170-foot tower here, is there ever a situation that you, in the future, say, we need to make it higher? What happens with, does that ever happen?
There have been sites like that. They don't happen all that often.
Right.
So one of the benefits of going through a special use permit or a conditional use permit is that you can approve the site with an attached site plan. And so this one is being proposed at 170 feet.
Right.
There are other federal protections if those weren't tied together where we could increase the height by, I think, 20%.
Okay.
But given that we're going through this process, it's a bit of a different situation. You guys have a height limit restriction too, I think is 175?
170
That's right,
foot
but-
is the max.
170.
Right.
So if they were to ever want to increase, as he said, it's the special use is tied to this particular site plan and tower height. So they would have to come back and apply for a new special use permit, and they would be requesting a variance with that if they were wanting to go above 170 foot, since that is our max. So
Okay.
you would have a review again if that were to ever happen.
Okay.
I think we would run into setback issues at that point as
And
well.
that's likely to.
It may not be, it probably isn't an issue with this particular request, but what factors come into play as far as, I know in the past, there have been towers that have been put up that have been masked or made to look like a tree or, you know, basically made to look like something other than a cell tower.
Mhm.
How is that done, and is that still something that the city can request it?
It's not. One of the conditions is that we can't basically place regulations on how it looks or its appearance. So I think that cities can probably still request that, but not base an approval.
Okay. Any questions, other questions for Mr. Anderson? Thank you, sir.
I appreciate your time.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Any discussion, questions from the commissioners? There do not appear to be any. Okay, the options we have are to, once again, the city commission will be the final approval or disapproval authority on this. Our motion can, based upon the findings as stated, either recommend approval to the city commission, recommend denial to the city commission, or table the issue for additional information. I'll go ahead and take a motion at this time.
I'd move that we recommend to the city commission to issue a special use permit for T-Mobile Tower.
And that's based on the findings as stated. Okay, we do have a motion. Do we have a second? Do we
Second.
have a second? Any additional discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Opposed? Unanimous? That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The official title is?
Yes. It would be, the Skyway Towers as approved. And then, we don't have any other business, but just to let you know, the city commission will be considering final approval of the sign regulations in 2 weeks. So those that you all worked on and approved at the last meeting will be getting into effect here pretty quickly.
Good.
Anything else from the commissioners?
Just a quick question, Julie. So with these new guidelines from the state, even if they wanted to go 200 feet, they basically could, right? With
From-
or no, I mean, not, I'm just curious.
From looking at what other cities have already put into place, there are still height restrictions that the cities are able to impose. So I do still believe that we can have some control over that. I'm not sure how far into the weeds we'll be able to get with it, but we'll have a little bit of a leeway, but not a ton.
It's pretty obvious the state wants to encourage the spread of cell towers and
Well,
communication capability.
From what we know, it's a pretty nationwide effort. A lot of states have passed very similar legislation, and so it looks like what's going to happen is that this will be more governed at the federal level at some point, with all the states kind of going the same direction with how they're regulating it. So it's not just Kansas, but as you're aware, the communication industry has a pretty strong lobbying arm, and so this is happening nationwide.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We're adjourned.
Nice meeting you. Hope to see you back at dinner.
I know.